Hello.
Hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Great. I see that Andrea is writing in the minutes, so I expect him to join.
And here he is.
Hi, Andrea.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. Thanks for preparing the agenda, Andrea. I haven't been too focused on this lately. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully you can see it.
Yep.
Shall we wait another minute to see if someone else joins?
Well, it would, of course, be good to have some more people joining, but have you heard from anyone? If they intend to join?
No.
No.
I guess we can get started as well. All right. Yeah, so welcome everyone to the CDEvents working group. Today is August 31st. My name is Andrea Frittoli. I work for IBM and I'm in EPC +1. Feel free to sign yourself in the participant list as you've done already. And the meeting is recorded. All right, so feel free to add things to the agenda if there are more things that pop up to be discussed. I started with trying to collect action items from last meeting. So the first thing I mentioned in last meeting that was pending was about the SDK Go, so adding support for validating through the JSON schema. Yeah, there was I had some issue with the libraries there on Go side to achieve validation. With some chat with Ben offline as well, helped me a bit, and finally found a solution. So that is done now. So it means that if you create an event with the Go SDK and then try to render it as a cloud event, it will try to apply to validate it against the schema first. Okay, second item was adding JSON schema to the spec, and I updated the PR there, and there are some comments from you, ML. And I think I put an item on the agenda later to discuss. Maybe we can go through those and see if there are also other things that we need to fix in the schemas, so we can finish that.
Yep.
Next was adding the data field to the spec. There is an issue open for that, but I have not worked on that yet, so no progress there. Next, we discussed about adding the version to the schema as kind of specifying an enum with a specific version, which is now done in the Go SDK. And let's see, I can add the link here. So it's done in the Go SDK, and the schemas are updated accordingly. Yeah. So where is it? Right, so the Go library allows this kind of tagging of the Go struct. So the JSON schema is marked as required and enum with one value only, and the default is draft. And this is then rendered in the JSON schema. Like this.
I think that looks good.
Okay, next for the Java SDK, there was an action to reach out to Jalander and see if he plans any more Java SDK work for the 0.1. But yeah, still have to do that.
I have had some contact with him over Slack on because he's intending to provide a presentation on the CD mini summit in Dublin, and we had some discussions there because he will present a proposal on adding an Eiffel integration to the POC. That's the thing he has been working on, and so I think he has been mainly focusing on that. And I haven't heard that he's looking into updating the Java SDK to the 0.1 version. So he still lives with the old version that is used in the old POC. So I would guess that he's not working on it for 0.1 yet. But of course, it depends on when when we release it, 0.1, if he will be able to, or someone else will be able to contribute that update. Anyway, maybe we shouldn't have it as a requirement for 0.1 to have the Java SDK there. I think it's good to have.
Okay, does this make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think we three cannot say anything else. Then it must not be a requirement since we are not ourselves working on it. At least, if it turns out that Jalander or someone else says that, hey, yes, we will provide it, or I will provide it, or something, then of course it could be added. But I think we can't say much more than this between us three here.
Okay. Next, in the last meeting, we had a discussion about the subscriber model consideration that was brought up by Ben. But what is the intent of the event? If they are one-to-one or they're meant for multiple listeners. And
yeah.
I think the action out of that was to add a diagram to the specification, and one of the existing diagram we have for the POC, and maybe some more text to make it more clear what the intent with CDEvent is. So it's just still an open item to be done.
Yeah, I also know that you had discussions, right, on the CDCon, was it, in Austin? with someone, I don't remember who it was now, on having prescriptive events or such. So maybe we should anyway clarify. I think that the outcome there was that it might be okay to send prescriptive events over the cloud events, but they might not be part of the core spec, right?
Yes, yes, correct.
So something like that should probably be written as well. So people thinking about that could get some answers if we are not available to answer them in person. At least that's kind of related when it comes to broadcast or non-broadcast events or so on.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Finally, you brought up the topic, Emil, of having a POC of reference implementation last time.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry. So we need to create an issue to track this work, at least. And yeah,
I don't know. Maybe we didn't really have time to talk that through on the last meeting enough. I'm not sure. The term reference implementation might sound very including, or what should I say? Very tough.
yeah.
I think what I was more looking for was more of a demo, a simple demo implementation for showing how a very simple hello world event type would be sent, more or less. And it doesn't need to be a complete set of events supported in that demo, maybe, but it needs to be up to date with the spec at least. So the structure of the events should be the correct ones, I think.
So question there, could the SDKs serve that purpose, or is it some other thing you want?
Well, hi, Brad, by the way. Welcome.
Hi, sorry, I just come from the meeting.
Yeah, no issue. Well, of course, the SDKs, one of the SDKs could be used, or maybe both, I don't know, or all. But I guess this would be, of course, some kind of simple SDK might need to be used. But the idea there I had was that we shouldn't need a full POC setup with applications like Tecton, Spinnaker, Captain, or whatever. But instead just a very simplistic CLI util or something. So very easy, show how to send events and how they can be listened to and what they look like.
So basically some kind of getting started examples.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I guess that's one takeaway from AFL is that we don't have too good getting started information. So people think it's difficult getting started. So if we can lower the barrier of getting started with it, it's I think it's going to be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Because if the only place to start now is to look at the POCs to understand how it works in practice, then you need to understand Spinnaker, Captain, or Tecton, or anything included in the POCs. That might not be the best starting point for anyone.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with what you just said. I think it makes sense. I like the idea of not requiring any tool specific knowledge to understand CDEvents.
Yeah, and I would actually guess that there exists some. I mean, those of you who have been working hands-on with the CDEvents over the year now, I guess you have had some very simple event listener or something, just echoing out the events to the terminal or something, that so you see what has been sent onto the broker, to the host or the server. So there might be things already that are very generic and can just be used to verify that the events are sent.
Yeah, I guess.
Or there might be existing tools in cloud events already that you can use. I mean, some library there or some.
There are a couple of tools. I mean, there is a cloud event player that's a web UI. It's a native service. But it gives you like a UI where you can see the cloud events going through. There is another one. Sorry, the name doesn't come to me, but yeah, I think it's, as you said, possibly developed by the cloud event folks as well. Yeah.
Of course, those then will not parse the events according to our spec and pretty print them or whatever, probably.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it would be nice to have something simple, specific to CDEvents. I think I created an issue about that. It was one of the potential ideas for project where we could spend the budget we had left.
Yeah, right. I remember. Yeah. I think that the question is still up. We didn't get to it on the TOC meeting yesterday, but I guess it's still there on ideas on how to spend this budget. And there are not too many months left of this year. So maybe that is still an option to get someone to implement such a listener for us.
Yeah.
Should we maybe propose that to the TOC group? See what they say. If you find the issue.
Yes, so I need to remember where I created it. But yeah, I will find the issue and okay.
I have to find it, but I can't. It's strange. Anyway. let's move on.
Okay.
Ah, there it is actually on the CDEvents repo. I added it to the notes.
Oh, is it?
You can go on. I can add it to the notes.
Oh, thanks.
Um,
All right. Next. Thanks. Next item on the agenda is the SPR with the schema. Right. So these schemas are generated through the Go SDK. And if you want me with some comments, so I need to address those. Some I wanted to discuss and make sure we cover everything. So
so there were two more comments which you commented, and I marked them as resolved. So I agree that we don't need to cater for those on this pull request, even though there are discrepancies between the documentation of the actual event properties and what we state in the JSON schemas here. But that could be in a later alignment request, I think.
okay.
Not in this one, but on some other ones that I marked as resolved. So you don't see them on this view, I guess, if you need to go to the conversation view to see those. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, there.
Uh,
Right.
So
So
I had some comments there, at least you can see them later on, but we don't need to consider them for this pull request.
okay, cool. Right. Yeah. So the first one, I agree with you. I think I need to update those and add them. Do you want me to do that in these pull requests, or shall I do it as a follow-up? I can do either.
Well, it could be a follow-up as long as we don't forget about it, I guess.
Okay. Well, I can do it in this pull request. That's fine. So then type and content. All right. So these are matching what we discussed as a format, but it's not like very well written in the spec, I guess, today. So
I think the only way we talk about it is actually in the example where we show a cloud event. That's probably the only place where those are seen at all. But yeah, there.
Yeah. Which I'm not sure why this renders in this horrible way. But we fix that as well. Yeah, so we need to document this.
Yeah, and the type there, shouldn't that be hard-coded just as the type on the context level? As we said there, or have an enum. So both the version and the type in the context and also the type in the subject, since that should be the same, if I understood you correctly, for each event of the same type.
Yes, we can hard code it in the same way. I mean, if we wanted to write a schema as a common schema, a shared schema for the different events, then it could be an enum with multiple values. But since we are using one schema per event, it can be hard coded. So I can add that too.
You have to make it clear that it needs to be the same for all events in this event type. So there is no freedom there.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. For the content, I know a lot of events today, they do not have any content defined because the data model is incomplete there. So will it be okay to leave an empty content in the schema for now? Because eventually they will all have some content.
Yeah, so then the event will validate regardless of what you put into the content there. You can put how much you want and still have it empty as well, and it will validate. Because you didn't say additional properties false on the content level, right? in the schema.
Let me check. It should be additional property false.
But not
If
within
it's,
the content object. Aha, it is. Okay. But that means then if you would add things there, those events will not be valid towards the schema if it's false there, right?
Right, but then I mean when we do add things, we need to update the schema accordingly.
Yeah, but if you would send a CD event today with your Go SDK,
Mhm.
will you not provide things in the content then?
Yes.
And then it will not validate if you do.
Yes.
If you just see an event on the bus or on the broker, and try to validate it towards the schema, it will not be valid if there are things in the content, unless we remove line 56 here.
Yes.
Or if we do it like this, we are forced to update the schema if we add content.
Yeah, and that's what I was discussing there in the resolved comment, if we should actually have things in it. I thought that's from the beginning, we should actually provide or add things that we know should be there. Otherwise, it will not.
Yeah, but this is aligned to the spec as it is now, right? So, I mean, if you look at the let's say pipeline run finished, the content is not empty, and that's because if you go in the where is it, core events?
Okay, I was mistaken.
And you go in the pipeline run, there are 4 fields. Pipeline run finished, there are 4 fields here.
Right.
But if
yeah.
you
I guess
go,
my confusion there then was that we don't state the content keyword in this page. So I was a bit confused what properties end up in what object in the event from this table. Well, confused. I of course see that when I look at the schema, but it's not clear. If
Right.
we think that the actual payload should be the same regardless of what binding we use. So the structure of the event within the payload should be the same. Then I think this document should reflect the objects that each of these event types contain and those objects properties as well. And not just low-level properties without any home turf, let's say. If you see what I mean. Do you agree?
I'm not sure. I think, I mean, we agreed that on the way we render this in JSON is to put those fields into a content container.
Mm.
But I mean, this spec is the CD event spec regardless of the binding. So this is the information that we have. I mean, the fact that this is included in a content field or that there is a type field which says this is a pipeline run is not.
Okay, yeah, maybe you have a point there, I think. But then there are some fields here, for example, the ID field, which is used in multiple objects. For example, yeah, the ID field is used both in the context and in the subject field, right? Subject object. And it's not, I mean, if you see an event on the bus, it's not clear what ID field this corresponds to in that event then. As an example. If you go back to the example again in the cloud events binding, in binding documentation there. So there we have the ID A2341234 and so on, which I guess the cloud event ID, and then we have another ID under the subject,
Yeah.
So if you just see this, and then there's also an ID in the pipeline run down there. So if you just see this JSON blob, it's not, well, of course you need to learn how the event structure is, but it's not directly clear what ID field is documented really in the documentation. And I guess the same goes for the type there. As you said before, that the type is the same for all events of this event type, but we don't note any of them in the documentation, what they mean or what they are. So I mean, we need to describe what all these properties mean somewhere, and maybe
Yeah. Yeah. So we need to describe the type and the content here in the cloud event bindings, and maybe we need. I agree with you. We need to do a better job there in the cloud event binding to describe how the spec maps onto this. But I mean, in terms of what ID this is, so this is a description documentation of subjects. And that's what tells
but down
you.
there you have the events description. If you go down to the events description, it's still, you have ID there as well in the events, right? And then you're not anymore within the subject object. It's the whole event. Or?
Well, yeah, I guess we could. I mean, it's not the whole event because the context is not there. The context is not there. It's just the same for every single event. So this is kind of the part of the event that is specific to the specific event. If it makes sense.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're heading.
So I don't want to now have like in the spec have the entire JSON schema here for every single event as a table. I don't think we should have that.
In that case, we should just reference the context or something in each of them, but maybe that's not necessary either.
Yeah, I guess we could maybe enhance these tables and have like a context with a link to the documentation of the context, and have then subject and then these fields or something like that to make it more clear.
We need at least to have some kind of description of the containers that we have there. Either that we describe, we have a com page with it like event structure or something where we describe different containers. And then these pages are for having the individual events and what would be in one container, or that you would actually describe each event with the container in a page. So you basically repeat the container information, but then you would have the whole structure of the event in one place.
Right. Yeah, I would like to keep the actual JSON structure separated, because that's specific to the binding, to how we render that information onto a wire, if it makes sense. So in the common metadata, we say here we have the context, and then we add the vocabulary. And then there is an example here of how that combination looks like. And then it says, okay, format of subject, they say all the subjects have an ID and a source, optionally.
So here, yeah, let's see.
I guess we should say include the type and content. We could include the type and content here, and then clarify that then what is in the content. So what is in the subject, and in the content is what is specified then by the vocabulary stages.
Yeah, so all these buckets of events, what those pages represent is actually the subject. Then if the binding allows you to group all those properties into one JSON object, or if there is some other way to propagate the subject over that binding, that's secondary, I think, but still it should be made clear that we talk about the subject on those specific event pages. I think, but yeah, I get your point, but that it's good to not include the JSON details within those pages, since we have different bindings. It's just that it makes the reader a bit, at least me, a bit confused when I'm used to seeing clear JSON examples in the documentation more. But
Yeah, I'm also unfortunately a little bit more towards that one too. I think it would be easier having a JSON example, or I don't know, UML model or whatever. I guess we can draw it on a picture to show, because JSON is one way of doing it, but I guess we're gonna have some kind of containers and fields, so it could be a graphical thing also. But I guess I have the same bias as Emil there, so.
yeah, either graphical, or it could be like a table, or some hierarchical visualization. It could be in text maybe anyway, but it's anyway we intend it to be, I think we intend it to be hierarchical regardless of binding, but maybe that's not true. If you would do a binary binding over HTTP, maybe that's not, it will all be flat, maybe. But isn't there anyway some kind of logical grouping, even though those properties might live all on a flat level, so to say?
Yeah, I see your points. Just trying to think. I mean, I don't think this is meant to be like flat, as these are like the subject. So this is preserving the hierarchical structure. I guess the content one is not highlighted there. So maybe we could kind of separate them out in the table to make it clear. And yeah, and then we could add one JSON example for each event.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth it to redo this documentation that much now. I still have some issue that we also duplicate all information here in both under the subject heading and the event heading. It seems to me to be duplicate information in many senses, and the same descriptions and types of, for example, in all of them. So, but that's, I think, secondary, and it can be changed later on. So I'm not sure we need to change anything now for 0.1, but it's maybe good that we have the discussion and can, I don't know, maybe we should write an issue on it and see how we can improve it after
about the duplicate information, I kind of disagree now, because the initial version was trying to avoid that, and then, I mean, the comment was that it was hard to follow because we only had the bits of information here and there, so there was no place where it was put all together. And I think we discussed that it's better to have the information multiple times, and maybe we can in the future use tools to generate it.
Yeah,
maybe maybe I misunderstood the old discussion we had, and that's the reason why I now made this documentation with, you know, all this, the subject first, and then the events that repeat the fields from the subjects, but only specifying that those that are valid for that specific subject. Yeah, I did not include the context here because I thought that was too redundant to have everything. But yeah, we could have like use these tables to kind of use some indentations, maybe, or columns in the tables to imply the hierarchical structure, and to have like the context, and then just a link to the context to avoid repeating, and then a subject, and then these fields and so forth. But yeah, so that's something that we can do over time, like to improve readability.
Yeah, I know we talked about that. If you can generate the documentation somehow and have one source for these both types of tables, maybe. Yeah, we discussed that. I understand. So maybe under the subject heading there, it might be fine that we don't group them in different sub objects. But then when we go down to the event subsection here, we might want to see them in their context. I shouldn't say context, in their object.
Maybe something like, let's see if I can. So this would be like, no, I didn't copy the table structure. Okay, so let's say we have this, and we could have something like, okay, I don't know how to rule this.
An example, or I don't know if I'm disturbing too much, but in AFL we have we specify this with a dot. So we have, for example, container dot and then the keyword. Let me dig up an example there.
Yeah, I'm thinking if it's too specific to JSON, but it's more an
I guess
object-oriented approach to it.
Yeah. So for example, here we have a meta source, and then under that, there are a couple of keys. And then we say meta.source. Whatever. I pasted in the chat, by the way, for people who wondering what we're talking about.
So there we specify the container or the object to the dot.
Right, so we could do yeah, so it's just here in the table at something like subject.id.
Right.
And then subject.content.
But subject.source is not correct then, because source is in the context, right? So there should be context.source.
No, subject can also have a source.
Aha. Okay.
It's an optional field, but just because basically the ID is always unique compared to the source, but if the subject does not originate in the source of the event, then you can have a source on the subject to make sure that your ID can be resolved or is unique compared to the correct subject.
I thought that was on the source on the context we talked about then, but that's not the case then. Okay.
As a source, yeah, it's
From the context, it says there. This does not mean it's the same as the context, or is it really a separate thing for the subject?
I didn't quite follow that one.
Well, why
The
would
subject.
we need different subjects there? It might be okay to repeat it if we consider the context to be on some other level, but not sure why really.
But
So
for
when it's-
structure, let's talk about the structure first. Though.
Yeah. That's better. But I think that the structure makes a bit more sense to me, at least, if we just add that dot notation. But do you think that's okay, Andrea, when it comes to different kinds of bindings, to have that notation?
Yeah, I think that's probably fine. Yeah. I mean, if we create a binding in the future where we do something different, we can change it to think about it, but I think it should be fine. Yeah, I was thinking of adding it as like extra columns here, but maybe it's simpler with the dot notation. I mean, one way or the other anyways. Yeah, I think it makes sense and makes it more clear.
Yeah, that lessens my confusion a lot, at least.
Cool.
For
right,
me, it's also better.
So, sorry, Mickey, did you say this is better for you?
Yeah, I agree with you on there.
Okay, cool. So let's okay.
While you're typing there, Brad, you've been silent. Do you have anything you want to bring up? Or have comments on anything?
Hello. Yeah, no, I was just watching and learning. One thing I did want to bring up is maybe at the moment we're investigating the idea of getting a Kubernetes event and then sort of transforming that into a cloud event straight away, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
there's a tool like Trigger Mesh, for example, that does it. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of it. But we're actually, Trigger Mesh is, let me just send the link. It sort of does that. So I'm just exploring the concept of if that would actually work, but I've been talking to the Flux team and they, I want to integrate the CDEvents into the Flux notification controller. And they said it's worth investigating getting the actual Kubernetes event and then sort of transforming it there. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think there at least they used to be, or I don't know if there still is, but something on Kubernetes side that
Yeah,
did the same. So it's
I need to
basically
understand more.
it's basically to transform like a Kubernetes event into a cloud event. I don't know if it still exists
Yeah.
or
I quite don't. I don't know enough about Kubernetes events to be able to look at it, but I'm just researching at the moment, just out of interest. But it could be quite a cool thing to help with some POCs. It's that difference between the integration and interoperability, because if you're still writing in every piece of software code that transforms it, it's sort of like an integration again, if that makes sense. So we're trying to look if there's like a standard way of getting that event and then pushing it on again. So we only have to do it once instead of for each tool doing like a custom integration. So that's what I've been working on with Flux, just researching that and seeing if we can put it in there. And then I haven't done that GitHub action yet, sorry. So I'll be doing that this week. I've been really busy with other things as well.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know what you find. I think there are some limitations in what you can put into Kubernetes event. So there is a
exactly, yeah. And that's the things that I need to understand as well.
And also, I think there are some policies that Kubernetes will apply in terms of, I don't know if it's called it like rate limiting, or well, if it sees an event multiple times, it will just send it once, and so it's kind of meant for monitoring type of scenarios, I think.
Okay.
But so there are some limitations, but I think it can work some use cases. So if you want to know like that a pod was created or a deployment was created or updated, and you want to transform that into a CD event, you should be able to do that. And I mean, if there might be tools that do that, or you can write a small like Kubernetes controller that watches for the resources and uses the SDK to send the event, for instance, something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's limited to just Kubernetes objects as well, or if you can use any CRD or anything.
Yeah, you can. I mean, CRDs are resources as well. So if you if you write a controller that watches for the type of resources that you need, you can react to events on those resources as well.
Yeah, I'll write a controller. I've never written a controller before, but that will be a fun task, and then I'll sort of report back what I find, just out of interest.
Yeah, if I can find the Knative one, it might be a good starting point. But,
because Flux don't want to have the proposal that we did for Captain, so they want us to try and do something like that instead. So I'm going to research it and see.
So just for curiosity, Brad, are you looking at integrating Flux with CDEvents for the purpose of the Ortelius use case, or is it for some use case at your company? Or
it's actually more for the Captain GSOC project.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's nothing to do with Ortelius, this one, but it's part of the Captain project for the Flux and Argo. So Argo's been done. Now we're doing Flux, which is a little bit harder.
Right. Okay. I'm just curious.
So, but it could be possibly used, if it does work, it could be possibly used for a lot of other tools as well, not just Flux. Like, for example, Falco.
Yep.
Yeah. I also seen someone in the general channel just posted that they're going to do a talk on Argo CD and Tecton, which is very, very interesting at a local meetup. So that would be cool to see that if they have it recorded.
Have you been involved in that, Andrea, in any way? I saw that you had a comment on that, or you forwarded someone there.
Sorry, I missed the last thing. I was looking for the source on Canadian side. Could you repeat the?
No, there was, as Rad said, there was a post in the general channel, and someone was forwarded by you there to talk about stickers. Someone who will do a local talk about Tecton.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, the person asked about it on the Tecton Slack, and I suggested
Okay.
to ask on the CDF Slack. That's as much as I was involved.
I'm not sure how much it involves events in that case. He doesn't say, but it would be interesting to hear about.
Yeah, you would hope so, because that's the way I did it for Argo and Captain, which is the same concept. Yeah, thanks. I wanted to ask you about it just to see if that idea was even possible, but it sounds like it's somewhat possible but limited. So yeah. Oh yeah, perfect. Thanks. That's quite cool.
There are discussions on
definitely.
binding a cloud event towards Knative, if that helps. So
That will
might
definitely point me in the right direction, I think.
It's a year-old discussion, but you will Google for binding cloud event to Knative. Might give some hints.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Sorry to go off topic.
Yeah, no, cool. So I think we are about the time. We have a bunch of action items. There is some work on the formatting of the spec to be done. I create an issue to track that work. And yeah, I don't think we necessarily have to do it for 0.1, but any improvement on readability for sure is welcome.
Correct.
So hopefully, iteration after iteration, we get to a point where the spec it's more like obvious and to the first reader as well. So cool. Any last thing?
Good discussions. I'm glad to hear. Might be a bit frustrating to not finalize the discussions always, but I think it's very good discussions we have.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, good talking to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.